Hello, I am with Liam today. I asked you guys on my Instagram the other week to ask us any questions involved with comp prep, business, relationship, everything all together. So I have a few questions on Instagram to answer. We'll try and get through everything quite quickly, but I'm so excited.
There's a few.
There is a few. Alright.
There's a nice mix as well. Like, they weren't all just comp prep. Some were a little bit business related. I don't think there's much more outside of that, but
no.
At least it's not just comp prep, the whole entire thing.
Let's kick it off. I think this is a good one to start with. I think it's quite important. Have we done anything different this prep?
Heaps.
A lot.
We've done heaps different this prep. I think like your first prep is a bit of a trial run, and I think even if you're a really established coach and you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, every individual is a little bit different, and so you'll learn on what works well for that person on the first prep, and providing you got half a brain, you would probably separate what you did well and what you didn't do as well, and try to improve on the things that you didn't do as well previous prep. So obviously the outcome we got from the first comp was not exactly what we wanted. So we broke down every decision we made and took the positives and isolated the negatives and made changes on those negatives. So yeah.
I guess like there's so many ways to approach a prep that you can trial a lot of different methods if something doesn't work. It's not one way or the highway. So
kind of riffs off like a story I did like an hour ago, which was like, there are facts that we all need to kind of follow, but how you apply that to an individual and what they get out of those facts is going to be slightly different. So there is a bit of trial and error, and I think any coach that promises you the absolute world, especially on that first comp, I mean, they can go in there with the intention of that, but you just don't know how certain things are going to play out until you full send them. And unfortunately, you have to full send and do the comp and go through that entire process to know if they work or not. And so it does kind of take a couple of competitions for you to really know that individual. And I think as well, that comp being Bree's and my first ever comp as a coach, there were even probably more lessons than what a really established coach would probably have to go through. I guess like the biggest difference was hiring a mentor. Like that was a really big thing for us. I think any coach that sits there and says they know all the answers is bullshitting, or they're
holding themselves back.
They're delusional. I like to think that I'm a really good coach, but I also understand that there's a lot of stuff out there that maybe I don't know or haven't thought about. Probably that's an even bigger one. There are just different ways of looking at certain things.
And arguably you can learn all of those things, but it's going to take you years and multiple competitions and things like that.
And you don't want to learn those lessons off someone else potentially failing to learn that lesson. So if I can piggyback on someone else's errors that they've made in the past, then I can kind of fast track some of that learning process. And so we got James on board for this prep, and he's someone we consult for decision making and stuff like that. Like I said, there are some concepts and ideas that I've never really played around with before, so that was already super duper helpful to have that. And then just a lot of alternative perspectives, looking at the same things we looked at before but under a slightly different light. And so that would probably be the biggest difference, the most major one. Obviously what we did with those changes, I don't know, we might cover them in a couple more questions. But I think that straight off the bat was the biggest decision we made, was hiring a mentor. And that's been really helpful, not only for Bree, but for
all of our clients,
the other clients that we coach. Not even comp prep, but you know, some of these ideas, I mean, at the end of the day, comp prep's just a really aggressive cut, and everyone wants to cut at some point. So those ideas will still apply to all the Gen Pop clients and everything like that as well. So a super important investment that we made going into this prep.
For sure. Alrighty, this one, a little bit of a interesting one. Is it hard having your boyfriend as your coach?
That's your question.
Yeah, I guess that's a bit of my question, isn't it? I feel like I'm quite lucky, because I do know of many people that haven't had the best experience with that, or could never even imagine having their boyfriend as their coach. But for me, I see it under like a different light, and I guess it does come down to you as an individual. But for me, I can go into this process with so much trust, because I can see how much Liam cares, because not only is he my coach, but he is also my partner, so there is even a deeper level. I can see him on the daily, we can communicate together. I think he understands me better than anyone else does. So arguably there is that extra, layer involved, and I just get a lot of reassurance seeing how much effort he also puts into this. Like, it's our collaborative prep, not just mine, and I don't just feel like another number in a coaching team.
I think what's also helpful is that we started off kind of coach client before we were even in a relationship.
Yeah.
So our foundation was coach client, or at least kind of business partners / coach client before it even turned into a relationship. So that was the foundation of our relationship at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I think it may have been difficult or different if we were in a relationship and then halfway through the relationship decided to do this, but because this was our roots, there wasn't really an adjustment period as such. And I think the other thing as well is that we're both on the same page, understanding the significance or the importance of not only Brie, but everyone getting to stage and doing really well and representing the brand under the light we want it represented under. So it would be very easy for me, who's not prepping, to sit down and eat a whole lot of shit in front of Brie and make her life really terrible. But I understand that my decisions as well are going to potentially impact Brie's adherence, Brie's performance, whatever it may be. And then that in an indirect way comes in and reflects on me again when she stands up on stage. So we're both equally invested, whether I'm doing the workouts or not. It's important that Brie obviously sticks to her shit and gets it done, and that makes it a little bit easier.
I think it also adds a layer to your coaching, because at the end of the day, you're a male, so you're never going to experience what comp prep is, but you can almost live through me and see each day what goes on and the negatives and the positives.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's been things that I've seen Brie have to deal with that maybe not every coach has the opportunity to understand, because that individual might not want to communicate those things to their coach. They would probably want to keep it between their partner and them. So getting that extra insight, I think even just from an intuition point of view, you see these behaviors then in your other clients, and it might prompt you to ask questions that maybe I wouldn't have thought about before if I didn't get the insight from us being in a relationship together.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's challenging, don't get us wrong. Like, it is hard at times, but at the same time, I think you can use it as, like, to your advantage as well.
Yeah. What are your calories and cardio at the moment? So right now my calories are sitting in and around 2,000. I am on a meal plan, and then cardio is 100 minutes across the week, divided either on rest days or training days. Pretty simple, nothing crazy.
It's a better position than what we were in previous prep. We spent a lot of time building Brie's calories up. Not that we didn't the first time. We actually had a really good run compared to other people we talked to the very first comp as well. But this one, we've put even more effort into that, and that allowed us to start our prep at 28 for a minute there, and then we brought it to 24, and we had 25, and we had this really aggressive push. The approach we're having this round compared to the previous is last was very linear. We kind of were looking for a similar sort of drop every single week all the way down to the time of comp, maybe finishing a week or two early. Where this comp or this prep, we're being really aggressive at the beginning, taking advantage of the fact that her metabolism hasn't adapted yet and trying to make as much ground as we can. And the idea is to then pull off that pace and actually really cruise in, potentially even reverse into comp if we've got the opportunity to do so. So we're being quite aggressive right now, but I think when you say the word aggressive and also 2,000 calories, it's not the worst situation to be in, So yeah.
Does all come down to your off season. Next one, I guess, is a bit similar to the previous one. Like, what's it like working and being in a relationship? But I think is more so in relation to business, over like a coach to client relationship, which I find a bit similar to the first question. We both are really passionate. So, when you go and work for someone else in a normal workspace, your employees don't see it as much as your boss does, like, so important to them. Their business is everything. For us, we're both our own bosses. It creates our life together. So I think that
You also ride that wave together.
Yeah.
So when something's going well, you're both really happy and excited, and when life isn't as good and maybe memberships are slowing down or you've had a couple of people leave or whatever it may be, which is the natural cycle of owning a business, you're both down in the dumps. So you both be at least matching each other's energy a lot of the time because you're sharing those moments together. But it's also hard at times, I think, because it sometimes is challenging to keep each other accountable.
Yeah.
If we're both, and that's why we have, Liv as our business coach, and we have Envy and all that sort of stuff, because it's very easy for us to get kind of carried away with our own thing. It's not like a normal relationship or a conventional relationship where both individuals have their own jobs and you come home and you have that other person to support you because maybe they had a great day and they've got the energy to give to you. A lot of the time, if life is shit, we're both feeling it, and we need that external party support or external support to be able to kind of ground us and keep us together. So Liv has been really fucking helpful. Really
she's
helpful.
more than just a business coach.
Oh, she's everything. Yeah. She's incredible.
How long have you guys been coaching? I don't know if that means like as coaches or you coaching me.
Well, we've both been coaching to get how long have we been coaching together?
Like 3 years?
2 to 3 years?
3 years?
3 years or so of coaching together.
2021.
I've been coaching personally for 10 years. I started coaching. I had a couple. Depends what the definition of coaching is, right? Like I've been in the gym space for about 10 years, but I even had opportunities to coach water polo and stuff like that when I was throughout school. So I've been coaching in some sort of capacity for probably even longer than that, maybe something like 12 or 13 years. But coaching in the gym with weights. And all that sort of stuff, I guess coaching under the definition that most people would probably be asking the question in. 10 years personally, and then 3 years with us together.
And then I was probably a year or so before we came together.
Yeah. So maybe 4 or 5 for Bree.
Yes.
Which is pretty good for someone.
Fun fact, Liam did water polo.
It was cool. It was fun.
Bit of an ick. Alright. Current training split. Bree's only training 4 days.
Yeah, you got it right. She's doing a 4-day training split at the moment.
Which is so different for me. I always preach that I would never, ever not do 5 days because I love training.
Yeah, I think there's this assumption, especially in the bikini space, that it's always a 5-day split and it's always 3 days lower and 2 days upper, and that's the blueprint for building that bikini physique. It's funny because I've come from multiple backgrounds, but much more performance-based backgrounds rather than aesthetic-focused backgrounds, so powerlifting and even doing a lot of training for other sports and stuff like that for a moment there, so using training as kind of a vessel to improve someone's, basketball or rugby or tennis or whatever it may be. And so a 4-day split was actually a lot of training days to me, I've had people where 2 to 3 days, depending on what part of the season they're in, is more than enough to kind of keep them there and have them performing as well as they need to. So the idea of a 4-day split has never been foreign, but then talking to bikini girls and just observing things on the internet, it's like everyone is doing a 5-day split of 3 days lower and 2 days upper.
Yeah.
For us, the rationale very simply behind it is Bree's in a deficit, she's depleted, her recovery is subpar naturally. When you've been in a deficit for a period of time, you're just not going to recover as well as what you would with minimum maintenance calories, obviously even better with surplus calories. So by pulling her training days down by 1, we're able to recover a lot better from those sessions. But because we can recover from those sessions, we're able to push really fucking hard when we are in those sessions as well. So you tend to find on the internet, especially when you're watching a lot of people, because that's what you do, right? You follow all these competitors and stuff like that. You see the constant theme of people talking about their training performance. I'm 6 weeks in and my training's going down now. I'm starting to feel the fatigue. Weights are starting to drop, all that sort of stuff. And I think it's kind of the norm. And although that inevitably will happen, we don't really want that kicking in, within the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
By going for a 4-day split, we can keep her performance nice and high and prolong the amount of time we actually spend performing well. So inevitably she'll start to feel it, but at least at this point in time, we've been able to keep the quality of her sessions really high the whole way through so far.
For sure.
So 2 days lower 2 days after.
Yep. This one, can we get a bikini hint? So obviously, by default, it's always going to be a surprise what I wear on the day, but
which is something I never really understood. I didn't think it was, I didn't know if it was like a bikini thing or just a girl thing or whatever, but I was like, you know, especially at this point in time, everyone's organised or should have organised their bikinis, put down payments on them, and they should be very close to being processed. So if you said pink and the next person was, you know, still deciding, even if they did wear pink, I don't understand how that is really going to
But it's just like
impact.
Exciting, the suspense.
I think,
like,
yeah, from like a
spend
dramatized
much money on
point of view, like you know, dramatizing the process and making it a lot more exciting. I understand that, but from a competitive edge point of view, I've always failed to understand that. Apart from just getting in people's head, I guess, by copying them. But so, what's the answer?
I guess like hint wise, it is so different to my last bikini.
And if you watch the breakdown of last year's, last year's.
Yeah.
Last year's competition, we did compete last year.
Yeah. It's literally like a year in like 5 days.
Yeah, so last year's, if you watch the breakdown, I don't know if you've had a lot of followers since that moment, but like I did a breakdown after it, and one of the critiques we got was Bree's bikini on the very first competition. Just saying it was maybe a bit bulky and kind of took away from her physique a little bit, so we've kept a lot of that in mind with this particular one.
And you guys have not guessed it yet.
Can we just say that the colour you did last year is not the colour we're doing this year?
Yeah, definitely. Which I think is usually a given, but just in case you were thinking it, there's no yellow.
We're not going to try to like redeem ourselves on that bikini.
Yellow is out.
It's not yellow.
And no black.
And it's not
it's not
going to be black. So it's not black, it's not yellow, and it's not covering as much as what we made.
You haven't guessed the colour. I don't think.
How would they even know what colour they've? I mean, the
I've
individual.
done polls before.
Oh, okay.
I think. I mean, someone might have tried to guess it last year, but
next one.
Has posing changed much? Definitely so. We have some new poses in there now because we will be doing bikini athletic, which most of you may know already or not. I have said it here and there on my Instagram, but
I mean, if you know posing and you've seen a couple of Bree's
there's some new ones
pictures and stuff like that of her posing, you might be already able to put two and two together if you hadn't heard it from her mouth already.
Yeah. So obviously working with Tani again this year for my posing, she is just the best and the best. But with bikini athletic, we need to make sure there's a good balance between strong and fierce, but also elegant and obviously feminine glam vibes.
Yeah.
We need to have a good mix, whereas obviously like bikini's very feminine, soft, I don't know what other word you'd use, and then fitness is very like powerful, like super.
There's always going to be a feminine element to all those, all the categories, because it's a female bodybuilder, it's FMG, but I think at this point in time, from what we understand, and bikini athletic, you got to keep in mind, has been on stage once. So what we've seen is obviously an indicator, but I think we'll get an even better idea as not only this year, but probably as the years go on, as to exactly what they're looking for. I think they might even be still working out exactly what they want. I think they have a really clear idea in their head, but in terms of how that actually plays out, I think that's something that they will continue to kind of shift those goalposts as time goes on.
Yeah.
So right now we're going obviously strongly off, first and foremost, what Tani has to say. She's the coach. We don't question. We stay curious, of course, but like you hire the best and you go with what they say. But I think the general theme right now is really trying to find that balance. I would say, generally speaking, bikini athletic is still on the feminine side more than the fierce and powerful, but we've got elements of that where we didn't really have elements of that in just straight up bikini. So yes, bikini posing has definitely changed. And just improved in general. Like the same sort of poses that you were hitting for bikini through practice have just become better as well. So for sure. So
I guess this one kind of brings us back to the last question. Are you doing bikini and bikini athletic? So yes.
We've already answered that. We're doing both. We're going to do both bikini and bikini athletic. We are eyes on the prize with bikini athletic. That's the look we're going for. That's the level of conditioning we're shooting for. That's the musculature we're shooting for. Like, we're trying to fit the bill of bikini athletic as well as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But I think for a few reasons, to, I guess, increase the probability of us achieving something, it would make sense to put her up on stage again while we're already there, while she's already in stage condition, while we've already got makeup on, already got bikini and whatnot. It would make sense to throw Brie up on stage for bikini as well. And
it allows us to get some more feedback too.
More feedback.
If I don't hit the mark with bikini athletic for some reason, they can obviously say, hey, like, you're actually perfect for bikini if you just came in a little bit softer or something like that. So it gives us some room for feedback.
And if our interpretation is not exactly what they want, you know, we might go in thinking Bree's looking really lean and really nice and like she's ticking all these boxes, but maybe to a judge's eyes that they might think the opposite. By putting her in both, we've kind of covered both bases there.
Alrighty, next one is, do you see yourself staying in FMG long term? Definitely. I love the look that FMG does bring. I think when I first wanted to start bodybuilding, IFBB was definitely like forefront. I think that's what most girls see when they go bodybuilding, oh, IFBB. And then the further I looked into WBFF to FMG, I just very much liked the physiques that were on stage. I think it was a lot more favored towards a natural athlete, and I just liked the look more importantly. And I think that's really important. At the end of the day, you are going through this entire process, and if it's not going to align with how you want to look at the end of the day, why are you competing? You know, if you are going to get up on stage and look a way that you absolutely hate, or is too hard, too, I don't know, things like that, why are you doing it? I think that was something that resonated with me. I didn't like seeing that there were girls that couldn't train the house down because they couldn't do their favorite exercises and things like that because there was a very, very strict criteria. Whereas I feel like FMG does bring a very specific criteria, but it's definitely flexible. It is a lot more inclusive of different body types and shapes and things like that. And there is more moving room between categories. I think the jumps between bikini and wellness in a federation like IFBB is a lot different than the jumps between bikini athletic, and fitness or wellness in FMG.
I think overall, FMG is just an opportunity to be more expressive, to be more creative, to be a little bit more yourself.
Yes.
There are obviously criteria and things that we need to hit, and if you're not a person who's into glam, well, you've got no option. You still need to, you know, lean into the glam. But overall, it gives you an opportunity to express yourself a little bit more and stay true to yourself a little bit more because you've got that creative freedom, rather than being, you know, a little bit more black and white with the way you do things.
I think additionally as well, FMG, I like the family community aspect as well. Something that I have heard from friends that do compete in other federations is that IFBB is bodybuilding in general is a very lonely sport, but in IFBB it is very like, stay in your lane, you know.
That's obviously what you've heard.
Yes.
Like, you've not experienced that yourself.
100%.
So that's just from stories you've heard
grapevines.
from other people.
But I do know that the community in FMG is unmatched. Like when I go to workshops, there are so many friends that I have made through that federation, and I just feel like we are all there to have such a great time. Yes, it's a competition at the end of the day, but everyone is still so supportive. Backstage, you don't feel left out. Like everyone is looking out for everyone, and I really do appreciate that. So I can talk from that side. So do you think this prep is easier? So in short, I actually surprisingly would say no. I think I did have a long think about this the other day because someone else had asked me this. I find that this prep is harder because I now have a standard that I need to beat. Being my first comp, I had no idea. And just getting up on stage at the end of the day was my best. I had nothing to compare. I put everything in that moment that I thought was my everything into that entire prep. This time around, I can compare to all of the things that I did last prep, that I didn't do this prep, all of the things come together, and I, at the end of the day, of course, want to do better than last time. So there is extra pressure on my shoulders to make sure that I bring my best, and I already feel quite confident that I am already doing that. But I think also the harder part is that I know what the process takes, and I know the milestones of prep. Whereas I think in your first prep, everything is exciting. Every single day is like, oh my God, 110 days. Oh my God, 109 days. Whereas this time around, it's like, it kind of hasn't hit yet because I know it's actually still ages away.
I think like as well, difficulty is going to be, first of all, different from individual to individual. Yeah. I think there are some people who really thrive on having gone through that process. So from a expectation point of view, when the going gets tough, it's not a foreign concept. They go, fuck, well, this sucks, but at least I've been here before and I know what that feels like, and it's not as shocking as what it is the very first time when you're brain fogged, hungry, can't lift 10-kilo dumbbells off the rack, like all that sort of stuff. At least you've had a heads up.
Yes.
You know what that has felt like before, 100%. And so it's less of a shock. I think from a coaching point of view, however, the second prep, as we kind of talked about in the first question, is arguably easier. I mean, pressure-wise, again, I feel that pressure, right? Everyone's expecting a much bigger and better package this time, and you want to deliver. So there's definitely more pressure than the first time. But we've got data from the first prep, and we know what you responded really well to, and we know other things that didn't work as well. So I guess the backing of the decisions that you're making, you definitely more confident.
I feel like my body is way more responsive this time around because we don't need to make mistakes. We know what worked and what didn't work. Yeah,
we just run with the things that we want. We obviously did well that first prep, as we talked about before, and I guess we're still guessing, but it's more directed and informed guessing with the things we didn't do as well the first time. We don't know if this is the right answer this time, but we know that previous approach didn't work for us, so at least this new one has a chance of being more effective.
100%.
And so I think from a coaching point of view, probably a little bit easier if you remove the standards and the expectations that people put on you.
Why did you guys choose Dubai? Which I think is a very valid question, and one I get quite often at the moment. I think the biggest thing for me that I've said before is that if you guys have followed me for a long while, me and Liam have actually hinted to going over to Dubai multiple times. So when
traveling in general, but Dubai being one of like Dubai was always somewhere where we wanted to, short term live, just because it's. At least from two people who have never been there before, who are about to go over there, it looks like a completely different world. It's like in a fucking vacuum. It's not... I think it's just so foreign, the feeling.
And I think you can see that other people, like I know it was a hotspot at some point for online coaches. So, we could see our lifestyle working there as well. But I think it did shoot our pride a little bit because there was obviously, it was put off. Business was, So
the plan was to, at a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, the plan was to try to move over there as soon as we could. But the best thing we ever did, as we kind of mentioned in one of the previous questions, is that we hired a business coach.
Yes.
And she really grounded us and kind of highlighted the fact that maybe moving over there at this point in your business is maybe not the smartest idea. We probably needed to, we did need to spend time growing the business. So
setting ourselves up a little bit further.
So we never committed to actually going over there. But now, now we've got the opportunity to go over there. It kind of worked well for us to be able to tie business and that trip together, get a taste for it. We might really love it, and that might be even more fire in our belly to go over there and actually commit to the decision we wanted to make a year and a half ago, or whatever, 2 years ago. Or we go over there for the just shy of 2 weeks that we have and not really enjoy it. And we've avoided committing to a country that we've never even set foot in before. So
it just felt kind of right, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, we literally have been talking about this for ages.
And plus, like a bit of like, and this is not business advice, finance advice whatsoever, but making it a trip like this is a business trip at the end of the day for us. And so the trip itself, can be tied in to the expenses for the business as well. So it made sense, like if we want to travel, if we want to go to these places that we've always wanted to go to, if we can strategically tie in business with it, it would be arguably more affordable, if that kind of makes sense.
I think that's
more justifiable.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason that I am excited to continue on with FMG long term, is their opportunities to travel and compete internationally, I think is amazing. It's huge. There's so many shows this year overseas. It's
like, I can't get over how many locations they're having shows. So, you know, the goal for us is to obviously do this and see how it goes, but I think both of us would really love, not only for you, but we've joked with other clients, you know, some of our other comp prep clients, that they might want to go overseas. The idea is to be able to foster an environment where everyone's traveling and we're able to go on those trips with them and travel the world and see the world at the same time. So Dubai has a bit of a special place in our heart because it was somewhere we always wanted to go. To be able to tie it into a competition is even cooler, I kind of think.
I'm really excited. What's the first date night meal post-show?
It's already been sorted.
Cheesecake Factory.
Bitch loves cheesecake.
There is one in Dubai. What the hell? I didn't know it was a thing.
And I've never been there because it's not the cheesecake shop.
Watch as someone's gonna attack.
But it's not the cheesecake shop.
No.
It's nothing to do with it's nothing to do with the cheesecake shop.
Not at all.
It's the Cheesecake Factory. Yeah,
and but it's just, and it sells like everything. Watchers will get some hate for not going to somewhere actually.
Well, obviously Dubai's going to have, well, not even like Dubai has what I would imagine is some of probably the best restaurants in the world, because it's the mecca or the middle ground for all these celebrity chefs to come in and do their thing, and we're going to obviously spend it eating cheesecake and shit.
No, that will be like one meal. We definitely are planning to sit down and really nut out what
we've got a plan
itinerary will be.
But I think as well, and this is probably a really fucking lame answer, but being able to just on a random Tuesday night make a fucking pizza or have pasta, whatever it may be, like what we can kind of, at least short term before we work out the next chapter after this one, we'll probably capitalize on the fact that we've got a bit more freedom, and we'll just have not even special meals together, just meals together. I think
especially being on a meal plan like that. I know last prep we were able to kind of take advantage of like a little flexible dieting night in, whereas at the moment we are trying obviously different approaches this prep, so trying to capitalize on that. And it's been a hot minute.
So cheesecake and then whatever comes. There will
and
definitely
the viral chocolate blocks that are all over TikTok, they actually come from Dubai.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of stuff over there. I wonder how.
I think it's safe that we're only staying 5 days per show.
I have no idea how expensive like food and drink and stuff is over there. We're not really big drinkers at all.
No.
But food, fuck yeah, we will. We'll see.
Excited.
Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
Cheesecake.
That's as soon as I saw it.
Cheesecake Factory. Fuck me.
What happened to the off-season coach? So for anyone that's watching that didn't know, our business was originally named the off-season coach. Do you want to answer it?
Well, to make a really quite long history very, very short, I watched my first bodybuilding competition as a spectator 4 years ago, maybe 4 or so years ago. And I was there and I was like, holy fuck, nobody did an off season. Like I'm not going to say the federation or anything like that, but I could very obviously tell that like building and putting the time in before prepping was just non-existent. And the couple of people that did, they were night and day above obviously every other person who was competing. So I was like, why does no one do an off season? Why is nobody putting time into their builds before they jump on stage and just chatting around and having general conversations, finding out that this was their first exposure to the gym. Like it was like, hey, I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to start a prep within the same week. It's like, whoa, hold on. Like that's unheard of from where I come from. So my motivation was to start a business called the Off-Season Coach, who really just specialized in those off seasons. And then the idea was to, once I've done an off season with an individual, palm them off to a prep coach, and they would be able to run their successful preps with the prep coach, and then they get flogged backwards and forwards to me. But the funny thing is that this industry is quite selfish. And if you give someone to someone else, the chances of them coming back to you is pretty small. So I would have to rely on a whole lot of people just coming once and probably not coming back again, unless you obviously really made an impact on them that they desperately want to come back to you. And in the process of that, I kind of fell in love with the prep process too. Like, I had a real interest in it. It was quite a foreign concept, and I wanted to learn about that. And unfortunately, the only way to learn a lot of these skills is to just full send it and have someone go through that process. So I reached out to Bree, who was just kind of a mutual friend at that point in time. And I was like, I need someone on the business side of things who is going to represent the female side, because I thought being in a female, orientated space or female based space, I needed a female as a relation point. So that was a huge part of reaching out to Bree. And the second is I needed a guinea pig. Like, I needed someone to trial the ideas that I had in my head.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to Bree, and I ran the off-season coach. We were in the off-season coach together. I thought there's no better way to get someone really invested in your business than bringing them on as an owner.
Yes.
Not an employee, not a contractor who you send $30 a fucking hour to or whatever. Someone who was fully invested.
Yeah.
And so I brought Bree on to have half that business with me, and we had that for ages. And then it was at one point with our business coach Liv, who was like, you're
aligning.
It's like, you're the off-season coach, but you're also doing preps now. Do you see there's a bit of
Gen Pop that are doing like just mini cuts
and all this sort of stuff, and I think the name just didn't represent what we were doing as well as what it maybe originally intended to be when I very first had the idea of running off season. So the off season coach kind of faded into the background, and we spent a fuck ton of time trying to come up with a name that wasn't lame, that wasn't taken, that could kind of represent the business that we wanted. And then, after a lot of time, we landed on Set the Standard, and I guess from that point on, that's where we've been. So that's a very condensed history of the off-season coach, which then turned into Set the Standard.
Yeah. Alrighty, do you have a criteria for comp prep girls? So I guess this is more of a question for you, because you definitely take comp prep girls.
Yeah, I think criteria is probably a strong term. It's not like here's a list of boxes that must be ticked before you go in. I think the biggest issues, probably a strong word. I could probably spend time coming up with another word, but we'll roll with it and just know that I don't entirely mean issue. The biggest problem I've run into is a lot of people really want to comp prep. They say the second you meet them, this is what I want to do, and I'm willing to do anything to get there.
I've seen Sally do a comp prep, and it's just so fun.
And you tell me what to do, and I'll follow it to a T. And no one really knows how difficult that process is, how time consuming is a really big thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that we want to put, as we talked about before, time into that off season, time into that build to set that individual up to have the cruisiest run through prep possible, and to be as competitive as possible. I don't really believe anyone should be jumping up on stage unless they go in with the attitude to win. They might not win. There can only really be one winner. Yes. There's going to be a trillion people on stage, but go in with the mentality of I want to win. Otherwise, I feel like there are many other avenues to express yourself and work on something, whether it be photo shoots, whether it just be your own versions of cuts, whatever it may be. I just think jumping on stage is a very extreme example. And to round back to my point, there's a lot of people who say they're willing to do a lot of things, and when it comes to crunch time, they crumble. And I used to really believe a lot of people's words when they used to say they're willing to do anything, but I think just through my experience working with quite a few people now, a lot of people can't handle it, and selfishly they can't handle the level of, I guess, expectation in terms of adherence that I have on them.
Yeah.
I'm not an easy going, do whatever you want comp prep coach. I have things calculated. I have things mapped out, and your job as a client is to follow those. I'm not saying you don't get an opportunity to speak up, you can't struggle or anything like that. There is many, many waves of emotion that will happen, and we will communicate them. But there also needs to be just an underlying level of acceptance that this process is going to fucking hurt.
And trust, I think, is a big thing. You know,
Yeah.
like you hire a coach because you don't know how to do it.
If you're sitting there questioning, there's a difference between asking questions and questioning a coach.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, whether it's the coach's fault, whether it's the client's fault, or a combination of both a lot of the time, to be honest, maybe there's not that level of trust there that needs to be established before jumping into a heightened environment like comp prep. So for me, what I ask in terms of criteria is that we spend time together before we jump into a comp prep.
Learn each other.
I need you
Make
to
sure
like
we
me
gel.
and I need to like you. If, you know, we're going to be in each other's pocket. We're chatting multiple times throughout the week. We're jumping on phone calls at weird and wacky hours at times to sort out, you know, little issues and problems and whatnot. We need to have that level of comfort around each other to be able to communicate. I need you to buy into my system, and I need to buy into you as an athlete as well and believe in you. And that just takes a bit of time. I don't think you can establish that on one consult phone call. So I ask for time for us to be able to establish that. I also ask time so then I can lay that foundation before we even jump into the build, and then that leads on to the prep. And so I think that would probably be the umbrella kind of criteria I'm looking for, is someone who's willing to give me their time and effort before the reward is given to them.
And it is a reflection on you and what you receive, because if you have a coach that is willing to take on anyone and anything, I don't think it is a true reflection of what you'll receive in your service.
Yeah, I think for me, I want to put the very fucking best up on stage. You know, I want the best on stage. I have a competitive mentality. I have a winner's mindset. I want to win.
Yeah.
And I need my clients to want to win as well.
Yeah.
When you're both on that wavelength, you're willing to do a lot of things to make that happen.
And that's what makes an athlete, you know, and a competitor, is having that drive and that why to get to stage and do what it takes. It's fucking hard. It's not sustainable, not healthy at times, but
it's the nature of the
that's
beast.
it. That's what you sign up for. And
I think there's just a mixed match in expectations at times. Maybe client feels like it's going to be a cruisy run because their friend worked with another coach and that coach said, yeah, you can do this. Oh, it doesn't matter about that. And for me, I like to be very certain with outcomes, as certain as one can be in this environment. And the only way to be certain with particular outcomes is to have a level of adherence that can be tracked on the way through. So I'm asking for someone to trust me. I'm asking someone to give me time to build a relationship. I'm asking someone who's willing to play the long game. And I need someone who wants to win.
Yeah.
And those are the things I'm looking for.
What improvements did you make this off season? My physique.
Yeah, I mean the big one for Bree, in terms of physique, comments we got after the last competition is that we were just lacking size.
Yeah, overall
and
size.
It was a combination of just time in the gym.
Yes.
Well, it's just time going through the build process. We gave Bree a long off season, but you have to think in like years and years in this space, you know. You can't think,
Especially
I'm giving it a 6-month off season or a 12-month off season. You almost need to do like 5 years of an off season if you really want to long term attain that like level of physique that is world class.
Yes.
And so we did a really decent build, and it was a excellent starting point. I don't think I would have changed how long we took to get to stage.
Yeah.
We still needed to jump on stage to have that experience, to work out if this is something even Bree wants to do long term. So we had to jump up on stage, and I think we timed that right. But after establishing that, like, yep, this is what Bree wants to do, and she wants to be the best fucking version of herself, we then went and were like, okay, well, we're going to need to build for even longer now. So we've added a heap of mass to Bree's frame. Her shape should be very different by the time she's really lean. And I think that's probably the biggest improvement in terms of like problem areas or weak spots or lagging muscle groups or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you can never have too much glute.
No.
You can really, it's hard in the FMG space to have too much quad and too much hamstring. I mean, sure, you know, you could potentially be wellness, but at the same time, it's very hard to overdo those areas. So we've just slapped more and more and more mass into those areas.
And it is a real reflection on how I approached this last off season, because my first one prior to that, we would have still kind of in the honeymoon phase of our relationship. So we're going out every second, day or every weekend.
Not every second day.
Sometimes.
No.
Well, we were
it was a bit more of a laissez approach in general.
We
it was still
out.
very, very calculated and dialed in, but we were still also trying to manage the early stages of a relationship.
And living, and I think, it wasn't obviously as structured as it can be. And I think you do see that in other people's off seasons. I think, we can be like, oh, it just looks like time off. It's not. It's actually really important. And then this prep and this off season, we made sure to treat it like a prep. There was very little deviations. Obviously meal plan for a few months prior to prep in general.
The idea of training intensity, and even for me, 10 years training and coaching, like my idea of what intense training looks like is recalibrated every 6 to 12 months. And fuck, the last year I probably didn't push as hard as what I could have. You unlock these new levels of pushing, and Brie definitely had a major shift in how hard she could train.
In my mindset, for sure.
Which is all, tied together, so.
Alrighty, last couple of questions, because this video is getting extremely long. I did ask another little top up, any additional questions before we film it, but we probably won't get time because we've already been filming for 50 minutes. So get these last few done, and we'll
do another Q&A.
Yeah, we might do another one.
Like that.
Because it's been fun.
Has been fun, but fuck me, it's a long video.
So yeah, we will kind of give it a couple weeks, and I'm sure we'll get a lot more specific prep.
There might be questions related to our answers as well, if people wanted clarifying.
I can see them coming through. I'm like, oh, we don't have time. Alrighty, I've seen your sheets. What are you tracking?
Yeah, that's a really long question. If you want to know all the details of what we're tracking, we would be here for another fucking 50 minutes. The idea is, at this point in time, I think my life, I've been very number focused. They've kind of made sense to me. I wasn't as great at English. I was a lot better at math. I loved accounting at school and all that sort of stuff. So collection of data, presenting data has always been a passion of mine. It's the way my brain works. For me, when making decisions, I always generally assign numbers or values to the possibilities and make decisions based off those as well. I probably, in the very first kind of year or so, for your entire prep, the very first prep that we did, the only prep we've done together so far, I was accounting for a lot of things in my head, but not displaying them to be able to communicate why my decisions were being made or how my decisions were being made, and then referring back when I haven't recorded anything, referring back to decisions and trying to remember what decisions I made. It was really fucking difficult because I didn't have a record or a log of what decisions I'd made and how I made them, and if they were the right decision, then repeating the process, or if they were the wrong decision, adjusting that thought process. And so part of working with James was also discovering and understanding different ways of displaying, tracking, recording data. And I guess he's quite well known, if you know James, for being very data driven. And so understanding different ways to be able to kind of put data on a piece of paper, and then also using sheets to your advantage in the way of formulating certain pieces and stuff to be able to make those connections and speak to one another, has not only made decision making that much easier, but it's also made it far quicker. And when shit hits the fan, which it inevitably does in a really dynamic space like comp prep, you can rectify that situation so much quicker. If someone has an issue, I don't need to get back to you next week. We can sort it out right this second, ideally. So that's the benefit, I guess, of having all that data there. And so to answer the question of what data am I kind of collecting and tracking, pretty much most things you can think of, plus a little bit more, is what we're looking at tracking. So it's not just body weight, but it's average of body weights. We're looking at sleep times, we're looking at sleep qualities.
Mood, I think, is one of the biggest ones.
A lot of qualitative data points. So perceived exhaustion in our training, perceived performance, stress levels, recovery. A lot of things that are very hard to quantify, but in my head, I quantify them by default without even thinking about it, because that's just what my my brain does, to put it on paper and to kind of have other people adopt that same thought process means we're speaking the same language to each other.
At the end of the day, the more variables you track, the more control you have over the process.
Yeah, so we've obviously got calories, macros, micros, fiber, sodium, we've got stool, we've got stool frequency, we've got stool consistency. Like digestion is a big part of this process. So collecting data around all that sort of stuff can be a little bit TMI at times, but it does make decision making a little bit easier for us. And if we run into issues, we've got data to be able to reference, to be able to make changes. But I think a lot of qualitative data is probably like the one that shocks most people. They're like, why are you asking how my cravings are today on a scale from 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 or whatever it may be? We can actually start to see patterns in the data. And instead of having someone blow out or having someone rebel against the system and using that moment as a light switch to go, holy fuck, we've got a problem, we can actually see that we're heading down that road and kind of pick it up before we actually hit, a proper issue. So it's allowed us to be very proactive with the decisions we make rather than being reactive. So
thinking ahead.
We collect a lot of fucking data, but the important thing is we can dial it back or intensify that amount of data depending on the individual as well.
Yes.
I've got some people who just track their weight every single day, and that's all they really care to do. It's all they have the energy and the willpower to do.
Outside of comp prep.
Yeah, outside of comp prep, for sure.
Gen pop.
I even have comp prep competitors though who I've kind of like not worried about collecting everything, because sometimes the collection of that data can be very overwhelming for that individual and actually turn them off the process as well. So there's a middle ground for sure, and there'll be probably times during the process where I really need you to be on top of collecting X, Y, and Z. But if we don't have any issues, we can probably chill out a little bit and not collect everything. So it's going to differ from individual to individual, but pretty much everything you can think of is probably being tracked in one way, shape, or form. Last question.
I reckon this one's good to tie it up. Will Liam compete? This one will be going on the thumbnail, that's for sure. Liam's next show.
In bikini.
We've actually had some requests to get him in the posing bikinis.
I had a lot of questions whether I will compete or not. The thought process is very, very simple for me. In order to be the best, you've got to be all in.
Yes.
I think we can all agree on that. We've talked about that throughout the video. And in order for me to be all in, I have to sacrifice other parts of my life, right? For me, my existence is coaching right now.
Yeah.
You know, all I want to do, all I really do is go to concerts and coach, you know? So if I were to compete, I do believe that if I wanted to compete to the level I would put, or to the standard I would set for myself to compete, it would require my level of coaching to probably decline, and I'm not willing to make that sacrifice. So I'm not saying never say never. No, I'm not. I'm saying like just probability wise, theoretically speaking, no one can say 100%, but there's a 99.9% chance that I won't stand on stage, because I don't ever want to pull away from the time, effort, and energy I'm giving to the clients.
Yeah.
Plus, I get my kick through. I've competed in powerlifting, I've competed in CrossFit, like I've had my little competition phases, I guess, and it's very, very clear to me that I'm much more of a coach than a competitor.
You get more excited for us than yourself.
Here's the thing, right? When you're a competitor and you get up on stage, if you win, fantastic. If you lose, you're going to be down in the dumps. You've got kind of this one point in time where everything leads up to this, and whether, depending on how that goes, you either be successful or not. For me, as a coach, having as many clients as we do, we're at a point where I pretty much win every single day.
Yeah.
Because I've bought into the client's process. When a client PRs, I feel like I've PR'd. When they've lost a kilo on the scale, I feel like I've lost a kilo on the scale. So I'm just constantly flooded with wins, as opposed to having my only one win that I'm working towards. So, I'm not saying I definitely won't be competing, but I guess my scientific side comes out and says nothing
you
is
pay them
100%. So 99.999 reoccurring percent, I will not be standing up on stage. But I'll live vicariously through everyone who does.
Well, I guess that will like wrap things up. Like I said, I do have a few more questions rolling in from those additional posts that I put up.
Fuck, there's even more.
Yeah, so what I think we'll probably end up doing is another one, maybe a little bit deeper into comp prep. And like I said, we might even get some more specific questions being deeper into prep. And there are some new faces obviously coming through because, you know, part of the process. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and if we get a good feedback and some more questions, we'll make it happen again.
We could even just move away from a Q&A and do like questions about coaching. What would you do in this situation? What would you do in that? Like something that people can actually apply.
Yes.
As well, you know, potentially. I don't know if anyone would be interested in that, but
give suggestions.
Instead of just talking about ourselves, we could talk about coaching related questions, and that might actually help you guys a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know.
Exciting.
Cool.
So, peace.